If you need a dragon for Feywild fantasy adventures, or perfectly unbalanced threats that puts the other dragons to shame, look no further. Because from all the lore and information presented, this opalescent-like dragon kicks logic out the window and aims to do the impossible. It's on its way to dethrone the Elder Brain Dragon as the top spot in the TPK or Bust list. The video series where I make an effort to rank the dragons of 5th edition on a handy-dandy tier list, from Team Party Killers all the way to dragons who are just a total bust. Although its origins are a bit construed, the Moonstone Dragon is some type of dragon that made its way into the Feywild, laying eggs and finally evolving into this, well, moonstone-like dragon. Crescent moon horn, hair, very thin tail, everything's pretty cool about this dragon. But its stats and abilities are a whole nother conversation, because it has not one, but 2 breath attack options, and I'll start by discussing its Moonlight Breath, a 90-foot long, 10-foot wide line of condensed moonlight that deals a fair 49 points of radiant damage on a failed DC 18 dexterity saving throw. Now, compared to green, or even bronze, this damage is a little lower than average. Quite a bit compared to bronze, at least. But radiant as a damage type is far less often resisted than damage types like poison or even lightning. But DPS isn't the be-all, end-all, as the second breath attack more than makes up for the shortcomings of damage, in my opinion. Its Dream Breath is a strictly upgraded version of the Sleep Breath that the Brass Dragon has, covering a 90-foot cone rather than 60. It does, however, have the same statistical effects. It is a sleep effect, it does have a DC 18 Constitution saving throw, and targets are asleep for 10 minutes unless they're damaged or awakened or otherwise, bothered. The usefulness of being able to put targets to sleep or deal good damage to the party, all while staying 90 feet away, means the dragon has full control on ranged combat that it could ever ask for. But it's not so unlucky to have only ranged combat proficiency, as the Moonstone Dragon can easily put up a respectable brawl, with its wombo combo damage dealing 47. That's adding in the little extra handy radiant damage that's off of its bite attack. And it's not even done with melee attack options. Being able to knock people prone on the tail attack is just sprinkles on the cake. To be fair, DPS per round is lower than other CR15 dragons like bronze or green, but the main focus here is the ability to follow up on the sleep breath. Because if one breath attack just isn't getting it done, the other is going to finish the job. Alongside applying prone or incapacitation with sleep, this makes the party really unable to follow up on any committed dives that the Moonstone Dragon needs to take on enemies. But like with every ability that forces a Constitution saving throw, it's a little less effective in practice than it is on paper, as many groups pump up Constitution like a roid-ripped gym bro on leg day. However, sleep is even more fickle than that, because some classes and races just are completely immune to it. But still, no matter the shortcomings of sleep as a whole, this ability hits like a semi-truck when it actually lands, and being on a 5 to 6 recharge with a 90-foot reach means this dragon has all the time in the world to make it work. And to shake up the order of operations in a list like this, I'm going to let the layer actions be here on the offensive section, because honest to God, they are extremely powerful. Powerful enough to mention this early. And instead, I'll be covering the legendary actions all the way down in the skills segment. The first layer action sends a motherfucker in a Shadow Round. They have to save on a DC 15 Charisma saving throw or lose the duel and their soul forever. Not exactly, actually they just stay in a dream plane and are stunned until the top of the initiative round. But honestly, this ability is a crazy good, almost upgraded version of the Gold Dragon's ability. And it locks down a player for an entire turn on one failed saving throw, making it strictly better than other options that this dragon has, in my opinion. The second layer action makes people boogie versus a DC 15 intelligence saving throw, making them not only waste movement, but they can't take actions either. This is just another ability that forces targets to basically skip their entire turn, and this time in an even more hilarious way. Plus, this is on a rare intelligence saving throw, which is extremely flavorful to me. Bonus points right there. The third and final layer action allows the dragon to generate illusions that cause disadvantage on ability checks. That isn't great in combat per se, but I could see an argument for it. If you have like an idea of how to use this inside of combat, let me know, but ability checks are just sort of what they are. On top of everything else, to the observant eye who's been following along, the dragon can actually impose a saving throw of every type. Think about it. You have to make a strength saving throw against the tail attack. You have to make a dex saving throw from its moonlight breath, constitution versus dream breath, intelligence from the boogie woogies, wisdom from the illusions, and charisma not to be banished to the shadow realm. This makes the dragon a threat to every single class in the game, because if you ever dump any stat as any character, that's a weakness the dragon can now exploit. It forces uncomfortable saving throws and actually pressures parties on their weaknesses rather than their strengths, allowing the dragon far more physical control of the combat, and it allows it to use and execute precise battle maneuvers more than any other dragon to date. Sure, it's lacking in damage just a little bit, but what does that matter when every single turn you're guaranteeing a player to skip their turn or otherwise get a debuff? Like, that's really good to me. Offense is always going to be more than just physical damage. It's always going to be about how the dragon can sow discord on its opponents, how it can obliterate the competition in real battle with efficient maneuvers and abilities. And because of that, this dragon just does it all. It does everything that I would ever ask for. Like, think about the game from the GM side of the table. The dragon has a trick for every single player, and ranged options for the annoying threats it doesn't even want to get close to. Just overall, the Moonstone Dragon's offensive score is easily a 10 out of 10, with no question here. Its sheer options just keeps any argument I would ever think of from forming. But the Moonstone Dragon isn't nearly done yet. It has an insane skill category, starting off with a stat block of 20 strength, 18 dexterity, 20 constitution, 22 intelligence, 20 wisdom, and 23 charisma. And because we don't have time for it, I'll mention it quickly. No, it does not get an AC bonus from its dexterity. It is very frustrating. I know. I'm just going to mention it now. Get it out of the way. Doesn't get it. We're moving on. With a grand total of 123 points for its entire stat block as a CR 15 monster, the Moonstone Dragon is insanely caked up. Like, we're talking double frosting, extra sprinkles kind of caked up. The only other dragon that even comes close is the Gold Dragon at 121 and the Amethyst Dragon at 122, and both of those dragons are considered like the king of their species of dragons. If that tells you anything, like, bro, chill! Like, not to mention the stunning dexterity it has, and the mental stats of it being insanely high, makes me believe this may be a mistake by Wizards of the Coast. Like, look at the CR in relation to the Amethyst Dragon and compare them. Compare their mental stats. The Amethyst Dragon is more CR than it, and it's known to be one of the most powerful dragons in all of existence just by its race. And yet, as a highly intelligent creature, it's 2 whole points behind the Moonstone Dragon, and 3 behind in wisdom, and 2 behind in charisma. Like, what is even going on? Not to mention, if you actually look at the ancient Moonstone Dragon, and then back to the adult Moonstone Dragon, it loses 2 intelligence from going from adult to ancient, which makes no sense when you think about it. Like, again, it could legitimately just be a typo. It could be 20 intelligence instead of 22. But again, these videos take the literal sheet as presented for adult dragons, so as it is, we have a Giga Brain level dragon with supernatural perception, a dominating force of personality. It's powerful, acrobatic, and ridiculously tough. Like, of course I'm excited about this, typo from Wizards or not. Like, I'm just trying to wrap my head around how good these stats are all around, and it's very difficult. It's literally the dream of every single player to have their lowest stat be an 18. Alright, in comparison, it does lose a couple of points in strength and constitution in relation to other dragons. Usually their strength and constitution is their highest stat. And this dragon does have a 20 rather than like 23, 24, 25. But why does that matter when every one of its mental stats are off of the charts? Okay, but enough about its insane stats. The Moonstone Dragon is actually still not done here. It has other powerful skills to cover. Getting an unlimited amount of Fairy Fire a day, and a 1 time a day of Invisibility, Revivify, and Calm Emotions. Now, Fairy Fire and Invisibility have major combat potential to me. Clearly, they both imply an advantage on the Moonstone Dragon's attacks, but specifically for Invisibility, it's a defensive tool as well as an offensive tool, depending on how it wants to use it. Not to mention all the shenanigans an Invisible Dragon can get up to, so you can think about that on your own time. For Calm Emotions, I'd wager to say that in the middle of combat, it is a tough sell, but Revivify, on the other hand, that's an amazing spell in its toolkit. Like, yes, Revivify can be used in the traditional manner. You can resurrect an ally that has recently died. But if you think about it from a persuasion standpoint, this dragon could actually nuke one of the party members, like, off the bat. Like, the moment the combat starts, this dragon just jumps one guy, kills him really quickly, and says, "Look, I can resurrect your friend here, and we can forget all of this happened if you shut up and listen to me." And they resurrect them on the spot. Like, imagine the diplomacy of being able to kill somebody and bring them back to life and be like, yeah, I have this level of power. You cannot compete with this. Or even to just get somebody off their back, they could be like, yeah, you can bring a guy to me and I can resurrect them if it's quick enough. Like, the persuasion and the ability to use this outside of combat actually encroaches inside of combat because it's so good. Revivify is such a powerful spell for a monster like this. I very, very much like it. Its legendary actions include 3 points the dragon can spend on things like spellcasting or free tail attacks between the rounds. It allows the dragon to try to apply Fairy Fire on a target before its turn begins, and then pounce on them when needed. Alongside all the other instances of advantage this dragon can earn, this Fairy Fire maneuver with its legendary actions, it's probably the most reliable out of anything. It grants the dragon extra damage by just being able to land its hits way more often than other dragons. I think this ability, in combination with knocking people prone and putting people asleep, puts the Moonstone Dragon like a league above other dragons. It's able to sort of mix and match how it's getting advantage, so it's not relying on one source, and I think that is extremely powerful and should not be overlooked. Now, to be fair, with everybody out there, there is one complaint I have, and that is that the Moonstone Dragon only has 2 forms of movement, walking and flying. There is no third movement option. Although I don't think this is a deal breaker, it is a little sad imagining this type of dragon not being able to swim. I kind of envisioned it physically. I suppose it could go get itself some arm floaties from a local artificer with its charisma being so high, but I digress. With its literal skill proficiencies in perception, persuasion, and stealth, common dragon stuff, the Moonstone Dragon has pulled further ahead than basically every other dragon I have ever covered to date. Between everything, and the only downside being that it can't swim or climb or burrow, I mean, the dragon is taking home a 10 out of 10, 2 categories in a row. And honestly, I would rate this thing as an 11 or even a 12 because of its CR. Like, honestly, a CR 15 creature should not have this amount of stats and this amount of, like, flexibility in combat. It is insanely powerful so far. For defensive options, the Moonstone Dragon starts off with an HP pool of 195 and an AC of 19, and at CR 15, that's not really anything special. But it has no damage immunities or resistances, and that's really, really odd. It does have a handy condition immunity to Charmed, but what an immense blow against the dragon's rating here. Like, just when it had everything it could ever want, it fumbles a bit here. Wonderfully, though, all of its proficient saving throws are actually in its mental stats, which means it is naturally extremely resistant to magic. And with its stats extremely high overall, magic that forces a strength, dexterity, or constitution saving throw still isn't that good against it. It will still probably roll very high regardless of it not being proficient. And, not to mention, its spellcasting and massive quantity of crowd control abilities will easily bleed over into the defense category, providing an enormous buff in this department. I mean, be real with me. If you can magically stop a person every single round of combat from attacking, that's basically the same thing as having insanely high HP or an AC too tough to break. You are preventing a damage source from dealing damage, and that is defense to me. Not taking damage one way or another, tactically, physically, magically. And this dragon can do it all in every category. It has a pretty solid AC and its HP isn't even that bad either. So like, all things considered, even with the fumble, I gotta give the dragon a 9.1 out of 10 for defenses. And almost all of this, and I want to do my due diligence here and really point this out, its intelligence is the major factor in why this dragon, regardless of the lack of like anything special in the defense department, is still getting a 9. And that's because in D&D, a 10 intelligence is average. That's like normal day-to-day people. But every point that you invest in intelligence sort of scales the stat higher and higher. The highest intelligence many heroes of legend can hope to achieve, even in the games of 20th level adventurers, is still only 20 intelligence. Such massive intelligence allows you to string together information and lines of thought so difficult and complex, even Sherlock Holmes might become lost in it. But it has more intelligence than that example. Like, it has more intelligence than the Elder Brain Dragon. It has more intelligence than the famous Lich, the thing that was able to achieve immortality. Like, it's the same intelligence as the literal Kraken. Like, you know, the Kraken, the CR23 creature, known to be an immensely intelligent spellcaster, that one. Like, just think for a moment what that means inside of combat, what sort of strategies and lines of reasoning it can conjure into being in every single second of combat. Just that, and its nearly identical powered up wisdom, allows it to read people in situations with so much clarity. I mean, when could it ever be deceived? I mean, seriously, what do you do against such overwhelming stats and mental might? I could be being a little overgenerous here, but on paper, as written, this dragon is simply too powerful, man. It's not a CR15 dragon. There's gotta be some mistake at Wizards of the Coast here. But to be honest with you, I didn't actually know that much about this dragon before I liked it. When I first saw this dragon in the book Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, I loved the design. I loved the way that the Moonstone Dragon looks. Its crescent-like horn, its fur, its scales, the coloring, the choices, the thin tail. I loved every aspect of the design. Not to mention, when I finally sat down and began researching this dragon, it is a prankster. It is a creature that protects its own with ferocity and with intelligence. And it is a neutral type of creature. It can swing to both extremes like many other Fae-like creatures. And that is so interesting to me, because not only is it a prankster, but it can be pseudo-evil. It's not evil by nature, but its pranks can get out of hand. And these pranks, established with a CR15 dragon with 22 intelligence, can definitely be complex, so complex that they cause problems for Fae Lords and local creatures. Like, imagine the catastrophe that can be done by a dragon who just thinks it's funny. Like, I'm so enthralled by the thematic nature of this creature. And honestly, every detail seems to resonate with me. I cannot talk enough about this kind of dragon. Like every other dragon, I do try to push people to use them and research them, but this one in particular has taken the spot in my heart as favorite. And I hate to say it, I love the Black Dragon so much. Oh my god. But it's no longer my favorite. It can't be my favorite after I know about this dragon. And although I even want to say that the regional effects that I don't bring up in these kind of videos, you should go read about the Moonstone Dragon's regional effects as well. I think they are very thematic and very fun. And not to mention its lair has like portals going to the Feywild, so it's got like multiple layers. Oh my god, this dragon's so cool. Just for flavor, it gets a remarkable 9.2 out of 10. I mean, come on. I'm gabbing about this thing like I'm some sort of schoolgirl falling in love with it. I mean, to be honest, I'd like to give it a 10 out of 10, but there's a problem here, and that's balance. I do genuinely think that this dragon is OP. Like, I genuinely think this dragon's too strong for its CR. A fair, balanced combat encounter would kill a party. Like, if you balance this and you said, oh, well, you know, my party's like this level, so a CR15 dragon, they can take it. No, they can't. They can't. They could get lucky, sure, but generally, no, they cannot. And that is a problem if you are running it correctly. Yes, you could throw, you cannot use its intelligence or its wisdom or even its charisma in a fight, but all of its other stats still allow it to put up way more damage and way more CC than it should be able to. Other dragons do not have the options or the stats or the abilities to do what this dragon does. And to that, I have to give it a 9.2 rather than a 10. Leaving us with the final segment of this video. And without surprise, the Moonstone Dragon has been so exciting for me to discuss. I have been so excited to talk about this dragon. I read about this dragon early when I was doing the Ghost Dragon, and I have been so ready to cover this one. And now here we are. I mean, come on, its mental stats are insane, man. It's so good. But with everything covered and all of its stats and abilities on pen and paper, its final score for today's video is a 9.6 out of 10. Just an insanely high rating that finally moves the Elder Brain Dragon from its throne by a whopping 0.4 amount. It's not even a close contest, to be honest, and I was lenient on the Elder Brain Dragon. Like, crowning this dragon as the new king of the TPK OR BUST list is well deserved, even if it's a little broken. And as a CR15 dragon, no less, the Moonstone Dragon is one I cannot express how much you need to stop watching this video right now, read and learn about this dragon, and run one, or go find one, or go tell your game master about it. This dragon will change your game for the better. Or the worst if it kills your whole party. But outside of that, I mean, honestly, just it's so good. And I do recommend game masters who run this one as written to be careful. It is on paper far stronger than other CR15 dragons. Like, I know it doesn't look like it when you just slightly peep it. You're like, oh, you know, I can run it. The breath attack's not that bad, and the claw attacks. If you put everything together, like I just did in the combat section, you will see very quickly that it can do so much. And I do wholeheartedly thank you guys for watching this video all the way through. And I will see you next time. Wow, this dragon's so cool. Let's go, man. I can't wait to do the next one.